Hello and namaste. Welcome to today's episode of Almost Daily Zencast. I'm your host, the Incorrible Mr Zeppo. Let's get started, shall we? Picking up where I was left off in the previous segment of, I think that was a breaking news segment I was just rambling on. And to connect that to today's discussion of what the fuck is going on. What the fuck is really going on here, folks? And I'm not talking about Trump and Putin. I'm talking about the bigger scale. The big question. What the fuck is going on here in this place we call reality, in this process we call life? I don't claim to know all the answers. Excuse me, I'm chewing on some vitamin C to try to prevent the soreness in my throat escalating into a coughing fit during this recording. I don't claim to know the answers. I do think I've stumbled upon a body of information that many before me have stumbled upon, and that many after us here and now will probably stumble upon, that points us each, individually and as a collective, in the right direction. But everyone wants a simple, straightforward breakdown, right? Just like keep it as clean and as tight as possible. Otherwise, we lose interest, we get lost, it becomes boring. So, and this is trite almost now. This is almost cliche because it's been in so many movies, it's been used in so many memes, it's been posted so many times on Facebook that even people who agree with this have sort of gotten a little bit blasé or, jaded about it. But everything that we were indoctrinated with growing up is a lie. That I know. That can be verified by yourself. You want evidence and proof of that? Start verifying things. Go start doing your own research. Like, what am I talking about? What have we been told that it's a lie? In this postmodern society, with nuanced variations for every cultural grouping that you might, can imagine. So from country to country, culture group, nobody, I think, has escaped this. The general indoctrination that's been around for a really long time that indicates that you are an individual completely disconnected from everything else in this world. That's one of the core central lies. That it's, if there were a core trifecta of the most important lies that we've been told, that's one of them. And the other pair might be that God is a sociopath that exists outside of reality and obsessive-compulsively watches our actions, judges us, and has set up life to be something that ends with either a reward or a punishment. That's a lie. And that one's a little harder to verify, but once again, I'm here to assert you that while I'm not claiming to be enlightened, these are things I think are personally verifiable. I think that anybody with a little bit of effort can look within and verify that the statement that God is out there somewhere and is going to punish us is false. And that we can verify on our own that the statement that we are all separate individuals with no spiritual or energetic connection to each other is false. And I humbly present to you that you can go verify those things for yourself. This is where people get overwhelmed. This is where the question gets thrown out almost unconsciously. How? That doesn't seem possible. I can't imagine. Or the statements of, like, I don't think I'm capable. I can't imagine how that would be, how that might work. I don't know how to do that. Meditation, at its core, as I've said before, is the abdication of ideological constructs. Why is that so goddamn important? Why? Because ideological constructs, especially those, not all of them do this, but those who overtly require you to accept the content of that construct as an article of faith, those ideological constructs like that, and in generally any ideological construct, whether it has that overt requirement of faith or not, if it's ideology and you're clinging to it, it is intervening. Or to pick another word, it is filtering the way you perceive reality. I was saying before, and I want to continue the thought here, that's how they oppress us. They let us play the game that this is all an ideological problem that can be solved through ideology. For example, this is a term that's being thrown around with, in relationship to terrorism. It's a war of ideology. It's a war of ideology. They are waging ideological warfare against us. And sure, I'm not denying that that is true. I'm saying there's more to it than just that, and that very statement is about inculcating you into being part of the ideology that is pitting us against each other and putting us in a position of being in conflict over ideology, about ideology. We are either actively engaging in the battle or passively giving our consent to the battle, and these ideologies don't exist in nature. They don't. I guess I could have put this as a headline in breaking news, but this whole project is freeform, and the titles are just there to give handles around some of the ideas. But let me break some news to you. I posted this on Facebook, I think yesterday, and I just referenced that so that if you like, you can go check it out and see the post and like it and share it, because I think people need to let this sink into their heads. The cosmos. Here's the post, and here's the thing I want you to contemplate for a minute. The cosmos, or that place that we call reality, or the universe. I can either make this a declarative statement, or I can posit it as a question. Let's start with a question, as a challenge. Is there anyone out there that can point to something in nature, besides ourselves, that generates ideology? For example, does the sun generate ideology? Not of itself, I don't think. Then again, I haven't gone and had a conversation with the sun yet. But from what I can observe, it promotes zero ideology. It's too busy being the sun really well, feeding us down here on this planet, on this womb, because all life required sun. We've managed to construct a false notion that we would be able to survive without sunlight. We really wouldn't. Despite the fact that we might have technologies that they could, in theory, supplant or replace the energies radiated at us by the sun, I don't think it would be quite as organic and as healthy and as good for us as the real thing. And mind you, all of life requires the sun to be alive, even that life which hides away from the sun most of its time. So yeah, like, ask yourself this: where in nature does this ideology originate? Well, those who are clinging to any religious ideology, they're going to point to God in nature and say that God gave us this ideology. But if you look into the facts of the matter, there's no evidence that God requires ideology. And I'm suggesting to you that the entirety of the cosmos, which is that which we call God, in my opinion, it does not need nor require, nor does it give a shit about ideology. That's a lie that those who control organized religions use to mind fuck the people who believe in those religions. Thus, as Einstein pointed out, as otherwise men and women throughout history have pointed out, we will never be able to solve our problems with the same mental tools that we use to create them. Or to put it another way, as I'd like to keep reminding people, we will never solve the problem of ideological warfare with the badgering of each other with ideology. Back to the mind, back to the reaction most people give about meditation. But I don't know how, or I can't, or I'm not capable of. But that's as silly as a cat saying I'm not capable of having a cat nap, of taking a cat nap. That's just silly, right? Like, cats know how to cat nap. Cats know how to be cats. Flowers know how to be flowers. The human species is the only species that has seduced itself away from a deep understanding of the most organic and natural way to be a human being. The way we live now is not natural, nor is it organic. We are straying as far away from nature as possible in order to get away with all the bullshit that we're getting away with, against our own best interests on top of it all. So, but why do we have this knee-jerk reaction that it is not capable to us? Because we've been indoctrinated to think so. Why? Because those who created the system of oppression were clever enough to realize that we might utilize meditation as a tool to liberate ourselves from the mind control devices that they've invented over the years. Because that's what meditation does. Meditation, as I've said in previous episodes, liberates you from your mind. Not the other way around. It liberates you from your mind. I talked about that at length in a previous episode, so I won't jump down that rabbit hole just now. But I will have to come back and revisit that again, I'm sure. Right? But I want to talk. Today's episode, this particular episode, is about something I want to address and have been wanting to talk about. I've skirted around it before. I call it the profit phenomena. Not profiteering, not profit as in gain of money, but as in, a prophet. One who sees spiritual truths and then shares them. Whether you believe in or not any of the prophets that the organized religions that are existing today are peddling at us, I see, and I'm proposing to you pardon the verbal typo, I am proposing to you that there's enough evidence out there to put this thesis together, and that we should investigate it further, because it might be something that helps us as a species. So, I've said before, we are, as a species, interconnected. We are not individuals. We are a generational species. We are a cyclical species. We are a deeply interconnected species, and there's something bigger going on at all times. There is always something larger at play than any of the petty individual thoughts we might have as individuals day by day. And one of the many mechanisms of that larger thing that's going on, I suspect, might be the occasional cropping up or, coming around or manifestating manifestation of someone who does embody what we call being or becoming an enlightened one. And I would suggest that Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, and a host of many others long before might have been real human beings who experienced that phenomena, and then later their religions were hijacked by the corporate war profiteers and their biographies besmirched, and boiled down to this sort of redundant biography that we see all the time, in order to inculcate more people in the indoctrination that prophet himself or herself was, in essence, standing up against. Because I think that the species understands, the species, mind you, many individuals understand this. I don't mean to disparage those who are already advocating massive change about how we run our society. I'm not the first, I won't be the last, right? There's plenty of people out there advocating for all kinds of change. But I think that cyclically, species-wide, there's a larger consciousness there, and it comprehends that a vast majority of our behavior today is self-destructive. Self-destructive, very self-destructive. Self-destructive to the point of it being damaging to the very womb that gave birth to us. And that the species has that we already accept that there's a sort of biological imperative to survive, right? And we often conflate that with, some sort of justification for violence, self-defense, violent self-defense. But there's a whole nother way by which we could be ensuring our own survival. And I think that there's a biological imperative there too, but we've been oppressed for so long and told that biological imperative is nonsense. And that's the biological imperative to achieve enlightenment. And thus, every once in a while, the species goes, man, we've really been letting ourselves oppress our own biological imperative enlightenment. We'd better give birth to somebody who sees through that bullshit and calls it out for what it is, and hopefully triggers or engenders or causes or founds or establishes a movement towards, healing dedicated to healing ourselves away from that oppression, out from under that self-oppression, because it's just ourselves doing it to ourselves. That's why I very ironically advocate for the non-hate. We have to stop hating those who oppress us, whether you hate George Bush or you hate Obama or you hate Trump. If you are busy hating, if you hate the Rothschilds or the Illuminati, or if you're busy hating, you are falling for their designed trap, because the more you hate them, the more they can control you. And the more you hate them, you know why they can control you? Because they are being controlled by ego, as opposed to being controlled by our enlightenment selves. So, here's after, forgive me, I'm wound up. I get excited about this, and so much inspiration starts to build, and I have so much to say, and I can't cram it all into one 45-minute segment. The cosmos operates in ways much grander, much more complicated, and much more beautiful than we've been allowed to comprehend. And that isn't me claiming that science has been hijacked just as much as any other institution. And I'm not saying that any given institution is in and of itself inherently evil, But it can't be denied that there's been a hijacking of them in order to perpetuate a pretty inherently evil agenda. And that agenda is to keep us unaware of how the cosmos itself actually works and how our body avatar is part of that process. there are multiple layers of existence to this reality, and this material plane is just one. And we exist in these other planes of existence. We just currently are so buried in our own assholes that all we see is our body self. All we perceive is our body self. We literally, our ego has shoved our spiritual heads right up our own physical body's butts in a symbolic way. In a you know what I'm saying? So even I, as a person who understands that this is going on, still mostly exist in a body-anchored place. I have had energetic and spiritual phenomena occur to me, but I don't exist free of my body material plane yet. But, arguably, striving towards a large, a goal that goes beyond any of the mundane, materialist, statist, things that we're obsessed with, on a much longer term trajectory than we can kind of handle right now, intellectually, most of us, we are destined, let us say, to graduate from this obsession with the material plane into higher orders of understanding and deeper orders of engagement with the cosmos as an aspect of it, as an organ or a facet of the cosmos. Whereas here in this material obsession, this illusion this nightmare that we keep clinging to, we think of ourselves impossibly as separate from it. That's what allows us to destroy our own womb in order to make products we don't need. We don't need bigger and better war machines. But that's what the vast majority of our time and effort as a collective whole is spent on. We don't need more fancy technology. But that's what a vast majority of the rest of us spend obsessing on. We don't need more creative, wild, and wacky fashion. But that's what another chunk of our population spends the time, the vast majority of their lives obsessing over. We don't need more entertaining movies. And yet, and there they are, and we keep making them. And I'm not trying to hate on those things or those career paths. What I'm pointing out is that they, sadly, no matter how awesome they may be on a certain level, they keep us distracted from the work we need to be doing on a much more important level. They really do. And that's hard. That's hard to say, and that's hard to accept. I understand that. But that's my calling, is to say these things. Say them as many ways as possible so that as many people out there can hear them and start to contemplate them for themselves. I made a meme quite a long time ago that's just like a chakra chart, just a body outline with a chakra chart. Here's your 7 chakras, and the text of it was, understanding this is so much more important than enjoying or engaging with or consuming anything on television. Maybe that's me butchering my own paraphrasing, but you get the point. You get the gist of what I posted. Our relationship to that which we've been told to ignore is so much more important than any of the relationships we've been told or fostered, encouraged to get obsessed with. Our relationship with media, our relationship with entertainment, our relationship with politics, our relationship with social dynamics, our relationship with gender identity, all of those things are infinitely less important than our relationship with our inner reality, our inner spiritual realm, which exists beyond labels, it exists beyond politics, it exists beyond gender identity, it exists beyond everything we obsess with or obsess over here in the material plane. Why is having an engagement with or an understanding of or a relationship with our inner selves, our inner world, so much more important? Because that is where the true healing lies. That is where the liberation from ideology and from the chains that we bind ourselves to in this material plane exist. That is where the liberation takes place. That's why every ancient mystic source talks about abdicating that which is outside and investing in a deep, deep understanding of that which is inside. Right? That's consistent. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about ancient Chinese mystics or ancient Native American mystics or ancient Peruvian mystics or ancient Japanese mystics. If they were mystics, which has sort of been my favorite term to use because it's not Zen, it's not Buddhist, it's not Hindu, it's not... all established isms have been hijacked. No offense. Even Hinduism. There was a Facebook acquaintance posting about that today. And I realized a couple of years ago made a meme and I focused on the trifecta. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Because those are the three most recognized organized religions in the world. In other words, most everyday average Joe Schmoes will know what religion you're talking about and will have some personal, emotional relationship with defending one and hating another of the three. That's the genius of the oppressor. They keep us, being in a place where we're either busy being seduced by some organized religion, which has been hijacked, or we're busy fighting with each other about which religion is the most corrupt, or we're busy ignoring all the religions and denying the ancient mystic truths behind them, which existed long before any of them were established and then subsequently hijacked. Crazy, right? Here's the silver lining, folks. Especially for anybody who's been following along recently and really engaging with my podcast and wants to know, what the fuck? Where's the answer? And I've worked it in before, but I want to highlight it now. The silver lining is that the all-caps truth is organic to our reality. The all-caps truth of spiritual life is really real in an undeniable, undebunkable way that is inherent to being alive. Therefore, we cannot be divided from it. The true truth, the divine truth, no matter how clouded our vision may be, is always there. No matter how blind to the truest true thing we may personally be in this given moment or that given moment, the truest of truths is always there. The divine truth did not go away just because we stopped believing in it. Or just, never mind that, because that isn't even the best way of describing it. Because belief is dangerous, right? Belief is how the hijackers of organized belief systems get you to believe crazy, wacky things that aren't true. So set that aside. The divine truth, the truest truth, if you're wary of the word divine or spiritual or whatever, just think of it as the most organic truth. The most real thing in the universe did not cease to exist just because we were convinced to not look for it, or just because we were seduced into being unable to perceive it, or just because we were convinced to not believe in it, or to believe in other things to distract us from it. And that's what's really going on. All of Western culture, in terms of that which is, a product of the oppressors, as opposed to a product of Western culture by a person who does not quite realize that they are being oppressed, or facilitating the oppressors, because there's a lot of things about our culture that come from people who are innocent of the core offense of being the oppressor. But it's all one, right? We're all interconnected. We are ourselves the victim of our own oppression. Because Donald Trump is just another you and me. So is, whoever, all the names I've listed, all the names every conspiracy theory has ever listed, whatever crazy angle those conspiracy theories may have taken, those bad guys are just another iteration of you and me. Because we are all one unity of consciousness. And that is what I mean. That's the thing that can be individually verified without subscribing to any belief. The unity of consciousness that is you resides before your perceptions. The unity of consciousness that is who you are exists before any identity label that you have adopted during your mundane life here in the material plane. The unity of consciousness that is that which animates your body as an avatar, it exists prior to any pledging of allegiance to any external ideological construct. The unity of consciousness that exists within you, that is your truest self, exists in unity and in singularity with all other centers of consciousness that reside at the center of all other existing life avatars. And that statement does not require you to believe it. That statement is there for you to go verify as a phenomenological fact that cannot be debunked once it's been experienced. I may not claim to be enlightened. I most certainly do not claim to be an enlightened being. But I can assure you that I have personally experienced enough undeniable internal physiological phenomena to say, wow, that's got to be real. That's got to be more real than any other cosmological model out there that insists otherwise. Especially those that boil us down to scared individuals that need to cling to ideological constructs and are inevitably doomed to kill each other over them. Which is the vast majority of ideologies peddled out there include those parameters, right? The vast majority of ideological constructs, whether they paint themselves as good guys or bad guys, include those required boundaries. You have to believe in that this is the better. We're the only ones with the truth. Everybody else is wrong. Everybody else is deserves less than we do. That doesn't make any goddamn sense because everybody is everyone else. The illusion of separation is a result of our individual contexts as experienced by each individual body avatar. And while each individual body avatar has the capacity to jump up and down and run around and with enough external resources travel just about anywhere on the globe, I know, forgive me for using the term, I'm not a globist. I am not a globist. I'm also not a flat earther. I'll have to do a whole nother episode about that because I'm already at 12 minutes to go before the end of this segment. And I've already addressed it before, and I've got plenty of postings about it on the internets. And why do I feel it's important to point out those two things? Because it's a perfect example of the bullshit of dichotomous, mutually indistinguishable, false dichotomies that keep us divided and arguing with each other. The more we argue over A is better than B, or D will dominate over A and B, or whichever, this ideology is better than that ideology, the less likely it will be that we will perceive the internal phenomena that are undebunkable, that will liberate our minds from the notion of being separate from everybody else. Now, the sooner we abandon, on all pragmatic and practical levels, our addictions to any and all ideological constructs, the sooner that we, as a collective whole, will be able to perceive ourselves, each other, the nature of reality, and the process of divinity more clearly. And once we can do that, how on earth will we ever be able to continue profiteering on our, engagement in organized murder? We couldn't, could we? No. We would not. I think it stands to reason that that's pretty sound logic. That if we knew each other to be one and the same, the divine thought of God, expressing ourselves as everyone else, then we would no longer need to divide ourselves, hate each other, kill each other, own more than each other, etc., etc., etc. And guess what? Buried deep under the bullshit that the hijackers ladened all the books with, of every organized religion, there's some statement by the divine entity that points us in that direction, that has survived. The easiest ones to point to are, of course, in the Catholic/Christian tradition, in the Bible. Even in its most debased form, no offense, guys, anybody out there clinging to a NIV or whatever, anything really, that's a debasement of what was once, some meaningful things that needed to be investigated and understood. But I challenge you, if you're a Christian, go look this up. Somewhere in your Bible, God says, "Be still and know." And somewhere else in your Bible, Jesus said, "Thine body be an eye. If thy eye be singular, then thy body shall be made of light." If we're lucky and we burn past this ideological self-abuse that we're engaged in, we will experience a massive, global, species-wide healing transformation. It will be many layers of that, but ultimately, at one point, those layers of healing transformation will lead us back home to that singularity of consciousness, which is that which we call God. I'm not asking you to take my words as articles of faith. I do not want you to believe in me. I don't want you to agree with me either, out of just not knowing any better or not understanding what I'm saying. I want you to go discover for yourself that deep inside your phenomenological experience, because that's what we are. We are not bodies. We are phenomena, which is a cloud, part of a cloud of phenomena, interchanging and interconnected in many ways, for which there's a lot of evidence out there. Here's a simple bit of evidence about what I'm talking about, and I've brought it up before. But you know how one of the evidences that indicates that we are not our bodies and that our experience of self, it becomes harder to say it is an emergent phenomena of the body if the body itself replaces all of its cellular structures and subatomic particles every 7 years. Different parts of the body at different rates, sometimes faster, some parts slower. But generally, on average, every 7 years, your body is literally and quite technically a completely different body than the one you had before. And yes, it seems to be all one progression and it seems to be all interconnected because the way we perceive time and space is really, really skewed right now. And yes, that is how and why disease and healing is perceived the way we perceive it now. It's because we are not aware of the fact that at the very core of our being, we are not allowed to comprehend by the oppressors that at the core of our being, our cells are no different than our self as the way we perceive ourselves. Consciousness is everything. Consciousness, capital C consciousness, the unity of consciousness is at the center of every phenomena that can be observed. And it is simultaneously causing that phenomena and witnessing it. And you can personally experience that inside your own mind. And that little taste, that little aroma, as other mystics have told it, the aroma of love and compassion, the aroma of God within you, and I think that might have been a Sufi thing, but I've heard it from others. I've heard that same kind of language used in Catholic mystics, because yes, believe it or not, deep in the roots of history, because it's not really ancient, right? The ancients happened before Jesus. Jesus had a lot of things to say about them occasionally. But deep in the roots of Christianity, there was practices of meditation. So that's what's really going on. What's going on is this recursive, self-referencing fractal of phenomena. Not of black and white absolute states of yes or no, but of never-ending ebb and flow. And all of it, without exception, the good, the bad, the ugly, the horrible, the horrific, the beautiful, the divine, in terms of what we call divine here in the material plane, all of it is being made manifest by the very thing that you experience at the center of your mind that you call me. That doesn't make you a supreme power with complete and total being in your avatar. That's the ego. And that's one of the ways that, like, for example, Christianity got hijacked. We were misled on what Christ's message was. Christ's message was, we are all the children of God. But it got turned into, he is the child of God. He is the son of God, special and above and better than the rest of us, sent here to save us. Which is ideological distancing from the real truth. Be still and know. Or as I like to put it, look within. Because that is where the revolution is. We can either keep fighting externally, out there on the streets, throwing rocks at each other, shooting bullets into each other's heads, rolling over each other with tanks, or we can comprehend at an individual, domino by domino, knock each other one over kind of way, comprehend individually, take responsibility ourselves as individuals for the verifying of this phenomenological truth that we are no different than each other, other than the way we sound and the way we talk and the minutia of our life experience. All of that is perceived. Here's the people still ask me even after I explain it, how do you prove that? How can you prove that? Here's how you prove it. Everything that you know about yourself is a perception. You perceived your life history, but you existed before your life history took place. You perceive your bodily emotions. You perceive, your bodily sensations. You perceive your mental activity. Okay? You perceive it. Therefore, you exist before that. In order to perceive something, there has to be some distance. Even if it is your own self. Let's stick to a materialist example for that. Just pure material. You can perceive almost everything about your body except that which is too close to your eyeballs or on the opposite side of your flesh envelope, right? But it's all perceived. You perceive your hands. Okay, but they're attached to my body and I can sense them from within. Yeah, that's a perception. You are receiving the data that they're sending you. Okay? You perceive. It's all an act of perception. More on this in future episodes and in past episodes because I don't have a particular timeline on this. I just speak when the goddess muse invites me to speak. And that's the shit that comes out of my mouth. Sometimes even I don't know what's going to be said and even I am blown away by it. But here you are, my friends. Go meditate on that. Trust me, meditate on that. Just meditate in the silence of your perception. And whenever a thought comes up, forgive it, let it go, and then return to the silence of your deepest, most internal, undeniably true, personal phenomena of perception. That is what will lead you to perceive your true relationship with the divine being. And that is exactly what the oppressors do not want us to engage in. Thanks for listening. This has been yet another episode of the Almost Daily Zencast. I'm your host, the completely imaginary Incorrible Mr Zeppo.